Yeah.
Hello, happy Thursday. If days of the week matter anymore, they probably don't, right? How are you, Tiffany?
I'm amazing, right?
Well,
It's not snowing, so that's an improvement. I do actually like the snow. I just don't like when it halfway snows.
So how cold is it now?
It's not super cold. It's 44
That's
Fahrenheit.
very cold as far as that's freezing. But thanks everyone for joining us. Sorry we took a few days off because I don't know, time both flies and stands still and everything. And really, the timing of this is tricky because 6:30, like I go to bed early, and if you do it at 6:30 and we're done at 7:30, then that's like 30 minutes before dinner, or excuse me, before bed.
Right. So
and
when
like
would you eat?
you can't watch Tiger King in 30-minute increments. So like that would really cut into Joe Exotic goodness. So you're missing out by not watching.
No. We watched the first 3 episodes because Mike and Miranda, who quite frankly have better taste in television, usually, were like, Nick
Then
would
hold on, better taste in television than
you.
Than me or than you? You're saying?
No, than you. Um, it's just very different, right? So like, what would Nick also enjoy? And so Mike was like, Nick would actually enjoy this because it is such a tire fire. And we watched the first episode, and Nick was so uncomfortable. He was like, this is embarrassing, and these people are not embarrassed, and they should be embarrassed, and all I can feel are just waves of embarrassment. So we watched 2 more because we're masochists like that, but we haven't circled back to it. That was like 2 weeks ago.
So you got 3 episodes in, but it was not thrilling enough, exciting enough to finish the show?
I think it was just that it was so awkward. So awkward.
Yeah, that's what TV is supposed to be. That's the whole point. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, maybe that's why we don't watch it. You may have just honed in on what we're not looking for in cinema.
So what are you drinking today?
How is everybody else? What are you guys drinking? I am drinking a gin and tonic with a fancy Spanish gin glass.
Now, when did you take the pictures for the blog of the nice looking glasses and the cheese plate? Was that like taken live, or did you have this in your?
I had these because this is why I'm always like taking those artsy pictures that you're like, nobody wants to see a close up of the cheese plate, but today they did. Today it was helpful.
Sure, worked out.
No, so those are various points in time from my kitchen.
And what is everybody else having? I'm having, sadly, just a White Claw, but desperate times, desperate measures.
Yeah.
Or what questions or topics or thoughts do people have today about the state of the world?
Well, that's a lot.
Maybe about the state of the world as it pertains to miles and points and airlines and hotels and people doing crazy things on planes somewhere in there.
Yeah, although people are wondering, like, what did you choose to watch on TV after your post this weekend? Like, did you get any new tips, or have you started any new series in the past few days, or are you waiting till the weekend?
I had bad memory before this whole staying home thing started, and now my memory is even worse because I have no sense of anything anymore. So I've been really into Drugs Inc. So, which is an old show, 7 series. So I don't love logistics personally in terms of doing them, but I'm fascinated by logistics of like whatever it is. I find logistics to be very interesting. So, Drugs Inc. So they filmed. Have you seen it, Tiffany?
I haven't, but I'm interested because actually the only section so far of the Tiger King thing that we really liked was the guy who was like a former drug lord.
Oh,
and I was like, this guy's amazing. Where's his docu-series? That's what I actually like. Okay, I have questions about the logistics of this situation. So I'm very intrigued by what you're saying.
That is literally what Drugs Inc. is, though. It follows. So I don't get how they do this because like does 1 in 5 cameramen get shot? So they literally follow like the most cruel drug dealers. They follow people who are just like hitmen who steal drugs from drug dealers. They're like dealers who redeal stuff that they stole from shooting, and like they film them directly. They're like, yo, I'm whatever, I'm Big G, and then they like point the gun at the camera, and like it's apparently real. And they even get involved. What is the Mexican cartel that it has like $15 billion and that's like way more profitable than any airline, whatever that is. They somehow
literally everything at this point is more profitable than any airline.
Exactly. But like, is there a PR department for these drug firms, or like how do they actually agree to appear on camera, and how do they know it's safe? Because how do you know it's not like, oh yeah, this guy shows with a big camera and then like, oh, I don't like what was in there, so I'm going to kill him. Like it's unbelievable how it works. And then also they follow cops in cities. So they follow cops and the drug people and the drug users. It doesn't make sense. How do they film all these people, and why are the cops not just following the camera people to find out who the bad guys are? Because
Right,
like
like let's just save time. Like we'll just meet you at the charging station.
So highly recommend.
Okay, I will consider it. We did spend a lot of last weekend playing just stupid computer games as just something different to do because it was terrible outside. We also transplanted a hydrangea because that's something else that you do in your 30s is gardening, apparently, and yard
What
work.
are stupid games on computers?
Well, so like we don't like if there was an interactive version of like Flight Sim to play, that is what we would be playing. Or if you could play like The Sims again collaboratively, like that's what we would do. Because like in order for it to be something I can do, it has to be complicated enough that it takes like 1,000% of my attention. So like most computer games wouldn't cut it. So we were playing Diablo 3, which is like a flashback to 2012. You would hate it because there are monsters and ghouls and demons and shooting things, but it's also really satisfying. And then as you go through, you like find stuff and you can like upgrade your stuff. And I'm really actually into that portion of it.
It sounds too complicated.
Well, that's just the thing. Like I can't do like mindless TV because I can't turn my brain off otherwise. So I do have a question. We got like 18 iterations of this today of people saying like I think your Virgin Atlantic post sort of scared people with how it's fighting for its life. So there's a lot of people who are like, I have some number of Virgin Atlantic Flying Club miles in my account because I have the credit card or I transferred some or I had booked an ANA ticket and had to cancel. Like if they go under, am I screwed? Like what do I do? Do I try and liquidate them? Do I transfer them to Hilton or IHG? Like what? Now that you've scared everyone, what are you? Please offer a solution.
So that's an interesting situation we've seen the past couple of weeks is that a lot of airlines have shut off redemptions for like being able to redeem for gift cards or toaster ovens or whatever, or like a Hello Kitty scarf. They've cut out all those redemptions because that costs them cash that they don't have now. And I think a lot of people are redeeming out of fear. So we're seeing people redeem miles poorly. And as a result, they're shutting off these ways because they need to conserve the cash. Stepping back, though, I am not personally worried about any airline going into business right now. I mean, if Alitalia and Norwegian get a lifeline, then doesn't everybody? It will be interesting to see because I feel like the point we're at almost now is that very successful airlines before this all started, they're okay. Like very, very, very poorly run airlines like Alitalia, they're okay because the government's like, oh, we can't let them fail now. It's
Right.
oddly sort of the airlines that are in the middle that almost seem to be in the most trouble. So I'm not sure how that's actually going to play out, but
Like
personally,
the Spirits and the EasyJets.
well, I mean, I think they will always have a market unless like social distancing becomes a thing. But like basically all of Delta's partners, when you really think of it, like they managed to partner partly because it's an investment strategy of like these airlines are mostly cheap to buy because they're not that successful and they don't make that much money. So Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Australia, it's the truth. Korean Air, all these airlines, like I think they're going to survive. So the point is, if they do go out of business, then either your miles disappear, or it could be that another program takes over the program, or that it continues because these programs are profitable in and of themselves. But at this point, I have zero fear of any of my miles disappearing, and I have balances in all of these as well. So I think
What
governments.
about those people who have Virgin Australia miles?
I mean, you can always still, I think, transfer them to Singapore Airlines, Virgin Australia. But I don't think they're going to go out of business. I mean, I just have a hard time believing Australia is going to allow that to happen right now, because then you're down to one real global-ish. Not that Virgin Australia is even really global. They just fly to LA. But I wouldn't be scared, but, you know.
Can you transfer back from Singapore?
It's, I think, to one way, and you lose value because it's 2 to 1, whatever. But no, I think you can only do one way, I believe. But I think the program would, I would not be worried about the program going out of business personally, but I could be wrong. What do you think?
I mean, I think that no one knows what's going to happen. The world is tilted differently on its axis now. And so a lot of like the traditional, like, well, in the past, blah, 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 like, I don't know if it's even relevant anymore. There's no way to know.
At this point, really, I think, like, is any airline safe? Like, if this continues for any amount of time, it will be up to governments exclusively to decide whether any of these companies have a future, whether it's American, Delta, Lufthansa, British Airways. Like, airlines cannot sustain this forever, and it doesn't look like an end is in sight. So
right. And I think that's actually a really interesting thing. Like you were saying, like, oh, what day is it anymore? I feel like with the people we're interacting with, there's a couple of really important things to acknowledge. Like One, we're all home and it's very hard for everybody in different ways. Like some people are like, I don't even know what day it is. And some people are like, oh, I know what day because I've been with my children now for, 17 of them, or whatever else. Like it's really different. But a lot of the playbooks that companies would typically use for like, oh, we're in a downturn, or oh, we're in a recession, or oh, we're in whatever. Like we had a plane crash on a tarmac and now we have to pull out our like, oh dear, we had a plane crash, press handbook of how we're supposed to react. Like this is all very different.
Yeah.
So nobody really knows. So
Yep.
like, and a lot of the worry that would be associated with this, like, oh, well, typically when we see like a country go into a recession, like they don't support their flag carriers and they fail. Like, but that's not necessarily what this is.
It's a very untraditional situation, so there's not much. I think airlines don't even know what to do. When you look at how many times did Emirates over the course of 24 hours, like, yeah, we're going to stop flying. Oh, wait, no, we're not. And then, oh, yeah, we are.
Yeah.
So nobody actually knows what's going on. Airlines don't know what's going on.
Right. And so I would say that to take comfort in that and maybe not fret. Like a week and a half ago, even people were really freaking out about what's going to happen with my airline status and my hotel status.
Yep.
And your initial reaction was like, that's the least important thing to be worried about. Like
Right.
something will happen. We just don't know what. Don't worry about it. And that seems to be playing out.
I think so. And I think we're going to continue to see. I mean, at this point, I think almost most programs are going to end up just extending status because
it only takes one.
Yeah. Well, when one does it, then usually most of them do. So we'll see how that plays out. But hopefully.
So Anthony was wondering, in rough economic times, do banks cut credit limits on cards? Should we expect that to happen? Is there anything anybody should think about?
Not proactively typically for existing card members, but they certainly may be more selective with the people they approve, or they may have, tighter controls on how much additional credit they can extend to people. So credit is definitely not as readily available, but even thinking back to the last recession, like I don't remember getting proactive messages about my accounts being closed. I would say, though, that some issuers do proactively close accounts that aren't
less
used.
Closing accounts and more like, hey, like we issued this account, like Citi issues crazy high credit limits on some cards, right? Like unnecessarily high. We've all, I think everyone watching has experienced that, where they might be like, wow, like we gave you $30,000 in credit and you've never used more than 4,000 of it. We're just going to reduce this down to 10,000 because then it makes our spreadsheets look better of what is our exposure. So that could definitely happen. If you're concerned about it and you have really high limits on cards, you could reduce them down voluntarily. But I think like you're not going to see something closed unless you're being a bad customer, which if you are. Yeah.
I can't really read stuff, so you have to.
What?
I said I can't really read the comments because
I know, but I was also answering questions. Would you get the Amex Titanium down the line when it came out, if it comes out, if that's the thing that happens?
The one that might be coming soon that we don't
super
know any details of,
premium thing that's like definitely you're going to issue in a recession?
The card that is, I think, at this point on page 37 of like a manufacturer's possible cards to create thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued. So, Amex, I think this is what it's referring to. There is a rumor that they're going to create a card that is between the Platinum card and the Centurion card. We'll see if that actually happens. It's a rumor at this point. I do think it's going to be pretty benefits heavy because what we're kind of seeing with premium card issuers, like if you look at Chase with the Chase FI Reserve, like it's actually a smart system they have where they're creating benefits with Lyft or DoorDash. I imagine they're paying almost nothing for it because they're giving people access to a very lucrative customer base. Like, what would DoorDash or Lyft want more than people who are living in cities typically and spending a lot on dining and travel? Those are exactly the customers they want, and they're typically higher than average income. So I think they're going to create benefits that are very cheap for them to provide, but that could have a lot of value. My thing that I'd love to see an Amex premium card actually offer a good return on spending. Like Citi Prestige, you have 5 times on dining and airfare, and Amex Platinum, you only have 5 times on airfare. So I'd love to see them actually offer a card. Like, give me the Amex Green Card benefits, but hi, Freya. Give me the Amex Green Card.
You are uninteresting because Dad just opened the door. So forget me,
I'm not
forget
even
you. Yeah. Which is eyes only for Dad. Yeah. Do you think the U.S. government should let domestic airlines code share on domestic routes to make the most of the few passengers flying?
Okay, so here's my actual issue with everything going on right now. Is that not only do we not like we don't have information, and the bigger issue is like a lot of these things there actually is no right answer, and like I don't actually have a strong opinion on these. Like for example, it's wrong for airlines not to provide refunds when they should, and they absolutely should. But we also have to recognize that if they did, like they would probably default, and like they can literally not afford to do that, which is like not our problem as consumers. So along these lines as well, like I think it's very
And which I
silly.
would say we have a like fiscal mechanism for that process. Like they could reorganize in a bankruptcy, like they could do that and continue flying. Like all of the major carriers have gone through bankruptcy with, you know.
And that brings up a bigger question of like long term, is it better if they file for bankruptcy? Like ultimately everybody also kind of loses, but not really. It's like the whole system. So when it comes to domestic code sharing, like the way I see it right now is we have airlines flying like Miami to LAX today, 777-300ER. I just found out this information a few minutes ago. You know, you had 30 people on a 777, like 4 people in business or something out of 52 in those flatbeds. Right. A JFK LA flight today had 4 people on it. 4. Like,
right. And part of that, it seems to be like Brett, who was on last week, did a post about there seems to be confusion about whether or not airlines have to keep flying in order to take bailout money. And it's, one of those, like anything done in a rush, not written well.
Yeah.
So would you agree that just shut it all down?
I think so my I guess the bottom line is I do think that I don't like the concept of code sharing because that is a monopoly, but realistically what I dislike more is airlines burning money and burning fuel and flying planes empty for no damn reason, and everybody loses except I guess the person who gets like a private plane across the country. But like it's terrible for the environment, it's terrible financially.
Yeah. I agree. I think we should just shut it down at this point. And if, the government wants to ensure essential service, like I'm in Spokane, I recognize that we are not on the list of continuing air passenger service if everything gets grounded, but that's okay because you should be staying home. And
perhaps so you would actually benefit or Spokane would benefit probably the most from the current system, which says that they have to continue their current routes. Like, for example, JFK to LA, they don't have to fly it still 6 times a day, but like Spokane, in theory, benefiting in terms of for the people who want to fly.
And I'm sure that we are still providing basically free parking. So if you're an airline and you're looking for some place to park and you don't mind some snow, this might be a good option. But yeah, like, why would we not just say, okay, like shut it all down and just let the airlines figure it out, or say, okay, we're not going to code share, but we'll have sort of a joint committee and we'll figure out routes with the DOT, and there will be one San Francisco, New York flight a day and one LA JFK and
exactly.
or whatever. And like, we'll just figure out who's operating, because it doesn't make sense to have like TSA and all of the baggage, like all those people are having to go to work and they're going to get sick.
I think
it's very bad.
One for every route or something, and then also cap fares. Literally, they're charging $16 anyway. Like cap the fares at $30, whatever. Cap them very low.
Yeah, sort of just use the model that we had during regulation, and this is what we're doing for the next 30 days. Sorry. So I guess I don't know. I feel less Venezuelan than, what ends up happening if you let everybody code share, then we just end up having domestic monopoly, and that's even worse. So. Anyways, on that chipper note, years ago, you said that you were looking forward to a day of staying home and not traveling anymore. You want to take it back?
No.
Or has this experience changed your thoughts about your later years or your retirement someday? Or
not at all, actually. So I'm lucky because like I used to quite literally be addicted to travel, where I had to get on a plane every few days, or else I would, I don't want to say feel terrible, but like I needed to fly. It was just instinctive to keep doing it. And so
like it was a little bit of a compulsion in a way.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
This is what I do. Like, this is my routine. I get up, exactly. I do this, I'm home for this many days, and I'm home for more than 12 hours. I'm looking for a flight.
Exactly. And so that changed partly because of Ford, but mainly because it's fine to be apart from him, but mainly because of Winston, because like when you have a dog, you don't want to leave that dog anymore. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, to me, having a dog is the best thing to get you over a desire to travel constantly, because you cannot explain to a dog, I'll be back in a few days. The look he gives me when I leave is just breaks my heart, which like I hate when I have to leave, but actually it's a good encouragement not to leave. So my point is, I came, maybe Tiffany, I don't know how to post links, but maybe you can find a post of like, I'm over my travel addiction post.
I can.
Because I am I was already, as of last year, sort of over my travel addiction. And I don't want to say I dread leaving the house. Like, I dread starting a trip. I'm very happy when I get to, the airport, but like leaving the house sucks to leave Winston. And as a result, no, I mean, I want to get on a plane again now. Yes. But I'm not having like
now, at this point now.
Well, I would like to if things were normal, but yeah. So no, I mean, the timing of that was, well, I'm happy I got over this addiction a year ago, because otherwise I would feel really bad.
You'd be literally impossible to live with. And I don't even live with you. It would still be terrible. What do you think, like, what part of travel leads the way back? Like, when will we start to see that things are on the up and up? Is it going to be like business travelers, leisure travelers?
So I have a post about this tomorrow. Okay. At least in my head. I don't write stuff in advance, so it's in my head to write tomorrow. But I think this is, to me, the most challenging thing we're going to see, because what does consumer confidence or whatever actually look like with travel? Because there's going to be a time where we can try to convince ourselves travel is okay. Then there's going to be a time when it's sort of ethical or moral. You're not being, sorry, I don't want to cuss, but you're not being rude by traveling.
I don't want to cuss.
I don't know. It just seems I haven't done it yet, so I might as well just stick to it. Like, why ruin a good streak? I've not cussed for 21 minutes. That's like a record. So I feel like if you can, microwave. Okay, sorry. So there's no. Okay, sorry. A little bit of drink, a little bit of microwave. Okay, so there's the time that we technically can't travel, and then there's the time it's right to travel, and then there's the addition of international restrictions being lifted. And then there's the fear of, like, is this going to be a China thing, as we know, where it goes away and then not goes away, but I'm saying it gets much less bad, and then maybe there are more cases again. So I don't know. Is my point. I don't know
you're
what
talking about the virus itself.
Yeah. Well, we're like I'm saying. I think for example that a lot of the shelter in place things are going to be lifted maybe earlier than they should be, because incentives to get people moving again and back to work.
Yeah. This is what happened before. So you keep talking. I'm going to find a really interesting article for people about this. But you keep telling your story.
Anyway, I have a lot of concerns about just, I don't think we're okay. And then on top of that, when this is all done, either everybody's going to be so anxious to get on a plane that we're just going to want to fly somewhere no matter what. And at the same time, like, people largely are not going to have been working for very long, so the disposable income will be low. Like, I think the road ahead, my point is very, very tough. And I don't think this is as simple as in a couple months we're all going to be flying places, because when you add up all these factors, we're probably a little tougher, in a tougher spot than I would have hoped a month ago.
I would have hoped. Yeah. And it's one of those things, like, once you know better, then you can do better. And we're all starting to know better, right? In terms of, like, what the impacts are and things like that. Hang on, I'm cleaning up a very ugly link. So on sort of not that topic, but this is really interesting, and just to promote, like, hometown newspaper. Nope, that's very, very ugly link. The pandemic situation, like, we had one in 1918, which some people have heard, like, people reference and da-da-da-da. But this story, which is in the local Spokane paper, which is cool because it's still independently owned. It's one of the last ones that also does journalism and is independent. So, give them your 5 cents of a page view if 1,000 of you go. But it basically, there's a lot of documentation, because in 1918, Spokane was very wealthy. And, Seattle and Portland were not really much of anything at the time, but there was a lot happening here. And there's, like, stories of the health inspector having to go in and, like, drag people out of the lobbies of theaters because they just wouldn't get the fact that they had to keep sheltering in place, even though we'd done that for, a couple weeks and everyone was bored of it. So I highly recommend it. It's good context and helpful, and not really depressing, but gives a sense of, like, this is what you do. Like, the cities who locked down the most aggressively also had the faster recovery. I think that's all interesting, especially as we start talking about, like, people wanting to travel. Like, Ben, did you ever want to be a flight attendant other than when playing Flight Sim?
No, only I wanted to be a pilot, but I'm not social, and I would be very bad at dealing with people who are annoying. So I don't think I would have been very good at it.
But you wanted to be a pilot.
Also, I'm very clumsy, so like realistically, I would have
That's
still.
true. It would have been a rough combination.
I would be paying for a lot of like new laptops after spilling
Spilling hot
on them.
shoes
So
first thing in the morning. Obviously, people would like to see Winston if he's available.
he just got a haircut today because his hair was so long that we didn't have a choice, and we figured we might as well do it now rather than. And if Winston, come here. He has a Winston, come here. He cut his paw yesterday, so Winston, come here. Come on, you're allowed. Hold on, Winston, come here. Okay, okay, sorry. Continue, and I'll get him in the meantime.
No, I'm enjoying watching the chasing. I'm looking for other.
Come here, 1 second. Winston,
other
come
questions
here.
that people had.
Winston, come here.
Somebody's asking if I can post the links in the comments. Probably afterwards. I can post them in the description box on YouTube. It's sort of a lot to manage all at once. Yeah, so that's now Ben is gone. It's just me doing happy hour. There he is. There he is. Oh, you look so handsome after your haircut.
He's dressed business casual. He has his tie on. See? I don't know if
he
you
looks
can see.
so much happier. I love that he can see again. I don't know that I love the tie.
He got his paw got bloody yesterday, so he had to go to the vet because he stepped in glass because some idiots keep breaking glass outside. And on the plus side, he's now on pills, and we have to put the pills inside of chicken so that he'll eat them. So it's
just antibiotics.
Yes, whatever it is. I don't know.
I was telling Nick about this, telling my husband, and he was like, he just started laughing. I was like, what? And he's like, Winston is so the first kid. Because like when we had our first dog, it was the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, like you cut your foot and like, let's go to the emergency vet at 2 a.m. so they can spray it with Bactine and get the antibiotics. And Freya will come in and be like, scratches all the way up her arms and chunks of fur gone. I'm like, oh, you're fine. Like walk it off, get some soap maybe. It's very, very different. So here's somebody who they booked a flight on United in basic economy and they paid extra for a seat assignment. When they canceled the flight, United said the seat charge is non-refundable and lost. Any thoughts or?
So the non-refundability, sorry, they chose to cancel the flight. I assume it wasn't canceled, but they chose due to, being not terrible people. So that is an annoying aspect of non-refundable fees, like ancillary fees, is often that they are non-refundable even when you cancel the ticket. Like realistically, if they were being decent, they should be refunding you, but United is not really being decent. This is also the airline that, we've seen what their schedule change policy is. So unfortunately, I wouldn't expect to be very lucky. You can try to dispute it, but, I generally don't encourage that because I don't think it's going to end well if everybody disputes everything. But that is not nice of them. So I'm sorry.
It's true. It's not nice. But it's like United is not nice.
No, they break guitars and drag people off planes. So.
Yeah.
And kill dogs in the overhead.
Yeah, all the things. Do you think this experience and the increased awareness on like germs and limited interactions and how people can get sick will affect travel permanently? Like, are we going to see a change in like seatings at departure gates or buffet spreads in lounges or?
This is one of the things that I have been wondering as well. That is a great question because I feel like, does this kill the ultra low cost carrier business model? Will food at airports and on planes not be the same? What do you think?
Well, or do the ultra low cost carriers do even better because their customer base is already acclimated to you pay for everything. So like you want 5 blocked seats around you? Absolutely. Like we have a button for that and you can pay for that, right? Like Sky Couch for everyone. I do think that's interesting. And we talked a little bit about like, what it would take to get people traveling internationally and for countries to allow it. And that, the ability to do some kind of rapid in-person testing and things like that. I think a lot will change. We've sort of likened it to, Ben, you're like slightly too young. Like I know you did this, but you're slightly too young. But like I remember as a teenager, when everybody would be going anywhere, we would go to the airport and see them off. Like friends, whatever. And then I lived in Utah. So like all the missionaries, like I feel like I spent half my life at the airport and anybody could go through security. You didn't need ID. You didn't need a ticket. Like there was no war on liquid. There was none of that. And everyone checked their bags. So the screening procedures were just your purse, right? It's like walking into a sporting event in terms of the rigor. And obviously things are very, very different after 9/11. So we'll probably see, I would say, a similar difference. We just don't know what it looks like yet. But yeah, I mean, I already don't like buffet spreads in lounges, so I would be a fan of seeing more things like the escape lounges where they have the little individual pots of things. And yeah, yeah, somebody else commented like, I would love to see the deep cleaning practices stick around. Like that's true. When I got on my flight coming back from Portugal, I got on the plane in Lisbon. I wasn't in Portugal. I was just transferring, and you could smell the disinfectant like as you came down the jet bridge. Like it was smelled like Lysol and lemon and like that very specific thing. And I was with Heather, my cousin, and she turned around. She's like, "This is the cleanest this airplane has ever been, like including when it left Airbus." So I would also love, 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 love for that to stay. So Peter's asking, with all of the point sales that I know you keep writing about, but it's with the big caveats of like, obviously this doesn't make sense for most people right
Yep.
now. We'll probably also see some transfer bonuses, I would expect, coming up, just once things get moving again. Are
Yep.
you wary about that? Like, obviously Chase isn't going anywhere, but
Well, so as before, I think, I generally only try to transfer points from a transferable points currency to another program if I have a relatively short-term use in mind, because, even
right, like
so
in
for
the next
Virgin,
day.
yeah, and maybe even more so now than in the past. I do think airlines will actually, like, I think we have better days ahead of us for frequent flyer programs, because I do think airlines will use their programs as a crutch, because I don't think travel will rebound as quickly as they'd like. So
Hmm.
I in many ways think we're going to be better off, and that there's going to be more opportunities. So I'm not actually that skeptical or worried about, are they going to devalue their war charts right away? I think we might actually see some positive changes. I could be wrong, but that is based on my assumption that I don't think travel is going to fully rebound anytime soon, even once we can technically fly again.
Speaking of things not rebounding anytime soon, any update on the situation with Air Canada Aeroplan's new system implementation disaster? I mean, should we still expect really long hold times, errors when bookings, problems with reservations?
I would assume yes to all of
Yeah,
those.
yeah, it's terrible. Still
That
terrible. Yep.
There's just a plane overhead. Let's see here. Hold on. It's ooh, how are they still Qatar Airways Miami to Doha A350 was just overhead. Who is on this plane at this point? Like, I understand there are some people who need to travel, like if there's a death in the family or something, but are people still returning like home? Oh, I didn't know anything was going on, and now I need to go home. Like,
There was somebody who emailed us because they was like there was like a friend of theirs who's a missionary in the Philippines, and not like somebody who's on a short term, not like the Mormons do, but he's been there for like 20 years and needed to get a flight back to the US. And I feel like those kinds of situations, like, okay, I've been abroad for a couple of decades and now or a long period of time, I basically live here, but my parents are anxious and I need to get home. That might still be happening, but I also feel like I'm sorry and you should stay where you are.
right
um,
at that point, that seems like the best option.
yeah, I mean, Jordan, who works with us, he lives in Spain. He's a permanent resident there, and his parents were like, "You should come home." And he's like, "I'm better off in Spain, I'm pretty sure, than coming home and like being around, grandma and making things more complicated for her. Like, I'm gonna hunker down." But that was like 3 weeks ago. So I'm sort of with you. Like, I don't know who's flying. Like, no one should be flying. I don't understand.
But Qatar Airways, they're not doing it for their own gain. They are serving the world, as they say, as Mr. Albacher
That's
says.
true. That's true. Um, I just love all of these. So if for whatever reason you're watching the live stream and you're not reading the comments, like everybody's ideas for all of the things that airlines can do going forward, like passing out personalized bottles of hand sanitizer along with the drinks and peanuts. Love these. Yeah. Um, and then Amir is pointing out, like, not travel related, but loving social distancing in the grocery store. It needs to stay. Yeah, my husband went to Costco last a week ago. We had like a whole list. We hadn't been out of the house for 2 weeks, so we had a whole list and a whole plan. And he's like texted me. He's like, "This is the most organized thing I have ever participated in. Like they are making everybody stand outside, like a 10-foot distance. They're letting a certain number of people into the store at once. Like this is amazing. I could have spent hours there because it was so enjoyable." So I have not left the house since March 13th, other than to like go for hikes. So I can't speak to the grocery store situation, but it does seem like people are being significantly more polite. in general. We have somebody who's saying that students are still trying to return home. And that's hard. Like my nieces are in college and they both, like when we were coming, we were still in Morocco. So it was like March 10th and both of their universities, one public, one private, said everything is canceled. Every student who's overseas get back now, like within the next 48 hours. So again, like I know it's hard and it's complicated, but oh, this is an interesting insight. Joshua said he had a trip planned to Greece and he'd signed up for the Department of State emails, that they send.
Mm-hmm.
And they are advising for people to fly back through Qatar because they have the most stable flights. So I guess that's.
They do have a lot of, they're doing a lot of these at this point, but I'm like, it's more who at this point is trying to go anywhere. I feel like at this point, most people should be staying wherever the hell they are.
Yeah.
Especially who is coming back to the U.S. at this point. I just feel like.
People with moms who are unhappy, like you would, like if you were living somewhere else, like imagine that you and Ford lived in Abu Dhabi or something, which is not like an outside the realm of possibility thing. And you'd have been perfectly fine there. And like they have great health care and you would have had a perfectly reasonable apartment and a whole plan. And she would not have accepted that as a solution.
Fair.
Right. Like, and it's not just your mom, like that's everyone's mom. So, is Emirates really going to resume flying next week?
I think very limited. Like I would guess a few flights. Like it's very strange for them to say, oh yeah, we're going to operate flights just for people leaving the country. So I question the extent to them resuming. I think it's going to be a very, very soft launch.
When we get back to reality or normalcy, which alliance airlines in general tend to be better for food? Like there's somebody who can become a Star Alliance Gold with Asiana, or they could get Sapphire status with JAL and access One World lounges.
So which lounges have better food?
Yeah.
I mean, I have become a One World loyalist. Like I actually think for the most part, like I would rather have the noodles at the Cathay Pacific Lounge and if you're Sapphire rather than Emerald, you don't go to the Qantas First Lounge. But I think in general, they have slightly better lounges like Lufthansa, Star Alliance. If you like pretzels, then maybe that. And I do like pretzels and
It's really
Funko.
hard because so much of it depends on where you're flying. Like if you are flying through LA and you're not a top tier Emerald, like the One World Lounge is pretty good, but the Star Alliance Lounge is better. Right? Have you been in the One World business class lounge like at LAX?
Oh, yes. Okay, at LAX, yes, absolutely. But Star Alliance only has a few lounges, and that's like the LAX one is actually the nice one versus like their Paris one is not. It does definitely depend on the whole Alliance lounge concept versus like individual lounges that allow Alliance members is a strange system.
Well, and especially it's complicated too. Like let's look at Heathrow. You have like the Star Alliance, you have a Star Alliance lounge there.
Yeah.
But you have the United Lounge, which most Star Alliance people could access and is much better.
Yeah, I mean, they have the Singapore Airlines Lounge, Air Canada Lounge, and United Lounge. So you have your choice of any of them, literally.
Yeah, and Lufthansa has lounges.
Yeah, I'm a Lufthansa. You have four Star Alliance options.
And then like with SkyTeam, you have the SkyTeam Lounge, which is like meh. It was like a flagship lounge at one point, but like it's only fine. Yeah. But you have then if you're flying Delta, you can use the Virgin Atlantic Lounge, which is like legitimately nice and all of that. It's very complicated. Oh, here's this fun. Ooh, famous people we've met while traveling. Do we have to have met them or could we have just been on a flight with them? Like we were on a flight with Chris Pratt once, like before he was famous. It was like in between the Parks and Rec and the Jurassic World Day. He was going to China, right? It was when we were doing the Beijing runs. He was on his way to China to do press for Jurassic World, like before it came out. And he like didn't know how to use the seat and he was adorable and very sweet. But like we didn't really talk to him other than to show him how to use the seat because like I felt bad.
If you're real,
I don't want to be bothered on a flight, but you've flown with like your celebrity crush and also didn't talk to them.
Okay, so there are a few. I mean, there are many. I actually don't remember most of them because I don't recognize. My vision isn't good, and I don't usually wear glasses, so I can't see shit. Anyway, if you're a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills fan, what's her name? Erica Girardi. She was seated.
Sure.
I guess one of her 2 private jets was broken because in the show she's like, "Oh yeah, just take the jet." I'm like, well, she was flying American Airlines, so I guess yeah, must have been out of service. Nick Jonas was seated across from me, but I didn't realize it was him till after. I mean, not that it would have made a difference, but yeah, and other people I don't really. Oh, I mean, my number one would of course be having flown with His Excellency Mr. Akbar Al Bakr, Qatar
Right.
Airways.
But that wasn't really a surprise and delight. Like you knew he was going to be there.
Sure, and that was part of the fun is that he's standing there with like in his pajamas with his like napkin with the buttonhole you know, when you put the napkin around the buttonhole.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he's like standing there. It's like a bib.
Oh, a bib for grown-ups. That's sad. And Sean Mendes reminds us, like, tell everyone the Gucci Grace story again. I don't think you've told that story since
my
like
God. Oh my God. Okay.
2010.
So, yeah. So, okay.
I'll pull it up.
Sorry.
Well, you tell the story and I'll pull up the link for people.
So flying, I hope I remember correctly. So this was years ago, flying SQ25, so JFK Frankfurt Singapore Airlines, back when they had the
It was years ago, but let me tell you the flight number.
Well, because the infamous SQ25, it's like the most loved and hated Singapore Airlines flight. So JFK Frankfurt, Singapore Airlines 747. So there was, anyway, Robert Mugabe's wife, Grace Mugabe, I guess Gucci Grace as she's known. Mm-hmm. She was, as it turns out, seated in row 1. I didn't know who she was. And she like put on this like undershirt, if I recall correctly, without like a bra or anything. And she's very whatever, like it was just very
well
strange.
Endowed, one might say.
Yes. And so she was like, she was going nuts on the caviar and like and then she had like her whole entourage and she had like a security guy seated in first. And then she had a bunch of other people in all cabins and they kept coming up. And like, I did not know who she was. And so this like German guy seated across from me is like, I forget, he was like, oh, I think he said in German, was für ein Schwein, like what a pig or something. And I thought he was just like being very offensive for some reason. And then I realized.
You thought he was just being very German and racist?
Yeah, I was trying to be polite. Yes, I thought he was being racist. And then I realized who it is. And then I started Googling a little bit more about Olive Grace's. This was after, I guess, the UN was a General Assembly or whatever, which for her is the shopping trip of the year. And she was just a mess. And then when we landed in Frankfurt, like they're all walking around the plane. And anyway, would not recommend. She was like very bossy with the crew. So that was a fun one.
That's a good story. Sorry, I was just thinking because I saw a comment on the blog. Yeah, thank you, Sean. That was fun. Of somebody being like they couldn't get to the link to the happy hour from the blog comment. But you all are here. So
did I get one of the links? Are there multiple links? And one of them is maybe, I don't know. Yeah, how they look. I mean, maybe the second link that was the brunch link. What are you making for brunch for us on Sunday?
I'm going to make, say, plum cake in German.
I don't know how to say that in English. Plum? What the hell's a plum cake?
Like that's what I'm making, but but the name is German.
Oh, Flammkuchen.
Yeah.
Okay, you're making Flammkuchen.
Yeah, but like it's not a thing in English; it's only a thing in German, and I can't say that.
Plums are even a fruit. Nobody never like at the supermarket. Oh, I should get some plums.
Well, they're only in season for a very short period of time, especially. This is more people are going to be like, this girl is crazy. We thought that she was a very sophisticated traveler. Let me tell you about my home gardening situation. So we have an Italian plum tree and then 2 French plums. And I can't say the name of the French, but they're like the golden ones. And somebody who's really into horticulture will chime in with what they are. But like Italian plums are only in season for like 5 minutes. So you don't really see them very often in stores. You'd see them like at a farmer's market and they'd be outrageously expensive for like a week and then they're gone. But I froze mine last year, so that's the.
Did you send? Was it the plum? No, it was some other jam. No, what was it? What
was
the jam?
I made plum jam and shortbread cookies for you guys. Do you want some more? I could do that. I have nothing to do.
It's probably for the best that we don't, because without any movement and with already eating just crap all day or drinking every day is the bigger problem. Is it's like I used to never drink and now, or not never, but like once or twice a week versus now it's like, oh, might as well have a drink because why the hell not?
Right. No, I could send you guys some jam though. Now you have that you're cooking, like you would actually like make toast and put jam on it is the thing. Like before when I gave you jam, you were like, what are we going to do with jam?
Toast is not happening. That would be Ford would prohibit that. That is carbs, and we don't have a toaster. So I think unless we're putting it in the microwave or the oven,
Well, I do my toast in the oven because the toaster is Nick's domain.
but starting the oven is just very complicated. You
Yeah.
have to like start it and wait.
Mirabelle plums. Yes, Jonathan. See, I knew. Like, you have the smartest readers. They're always like, here, you want some random information? I have you some random information.
You know everything. It's
Yeah. Speaking of super random information, you should do a post on the unclaimed property money thing.
oh yeah, what the hell? Sorry, see, so what? Yeah, I don't know what happened
Yeah.
there.
Um, I did
I
not know
so
about this until yesterday, and it's the coolest thing. It's probably not actually cool if you're like, we're just people who like deals, right? So it's like, ooh, I got it made $10 or whatever from doing something ridiculous. But apparently, like, if you have moved or if a company is lazy and they can't find you or there's been like not enough activity, they just send your money to the state and they hold it for you. Right. But I didn't know this. And like,
I didn't know
I've
it
lived,
either. How is that? I don't understand.
right. So I just found out about it yesterday. I was like, let me start looking through it, all the different states that I've lived, and there's a lot of them. And most of the amounts were like, here's 98 cents from like some unredeemed gift card. But there was also like the utilities deposit from the first apartment that Nick and I lived in together, which was our first apartment we lived in together, and we were young with no credit. So it was like $200 and like $50 from this and $50 from that. So I feel like I don't know how difficult it is to actually claim these things in practice. Like, I submitted all the claim forms and we'll see. But, it doesn't just show you your information. You see like everybody with a last name adjacent. And some people have like a lot of money sitting around.
Wait, they show you other people's information as well, or other
Well,
people's?
because it just says like I told you, like I just searched in Florida because I'm like, okay, well, I'm looking at this. Like, I should look for Points Pros now. And like, I put in your last name and like stuff for your family was there too. And it's like, I know who they are, so I can see it, but it doesn't tell you like all the specifics of it necessarily. It just says like under $25 or over $25 or like safe deposit box key or, securities. Like, there's a whole category. Like, it's a whole thing.
Interesting. Who knew? I sure as hell didn't.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, yeah, so Danny appreciates my excitement about unclaimed property. And yes, exactly. Like, this could be a great quarantine project. It is. Like, it's a great, if people who are home, you're like, what's something productive I can do with the next 20 minutes? My cousin's husband, like, she went through and he's lived in like Ohio for med school and a couple other places. There's like $500 of like random, like a final paycheck that got sent, but they didn't really send it to the right place. And a lot of utility deposits. Yeah. How do you travel and avoid carbs? Well, it depends. Like, I'd say if Ford isn't there, you don't avoid carbs.
I don't. I just know. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Ford avoids carbs. We can bring him on to have a like, how do you travel while avoiding carbs?
I mean, garlic bread on some airlines is very good, and the pretzel roll on American Airlines is probably the best thing they have. So
Yeah. As somebody who can't eat most carbohydrates, at least not the kinds that people enjoy, I mean, I can eat green vegetables and things like that. That's fine. It is very hard. I pack a lot of snacks in my bag, like almonds, lots of almonds in my bag and cheese. And it's one of those things where actually the crummier lounges are better because like the worst Admiral's Club will have cubed cheese. But at least cube cheese doesn't have gluten versus like the Sky Clubs, very few of them have items that are gluten free.
but no food is better than that cube cheese in a airline cube
But I
cheese
think
is
you've
just,
actually never been like hungry and in a situation like you can eat on the plane. I can eat on the plane like maybe 10% of the time.
yeah, I can eat on the plane, but I can eat on the American Airlines plane, which is like, oh, would you like, some nasty brisket crap or like,
Right.
oh, mac and cheese with something. And it's just like,
Right. So
no.
I pack snacks and I also just fast and just take the intention of like, I'm just fasting and I'm used to doing that. I sort of grew up doing some religious fasting. So it's not a huge deal to fast for like 24 hours. It's not a big deal. But some people, that's not an option. So, um, yeah. Okay, so somebody was accepted to an international high school in Bosnia, which sounds really interesting. She has to leave at this point at the end of August. Book a ward travel or pay for a ticket now.
Book award travel so that, if you pay for a ticket, they're probably not going to let you refund it if you change your mind or if there's a schedule change versus, they'll give you a credit that you can use towards a future ticket. And especially if you're going to, you might not be traveling that much necessarily on that airline in the future if you're in Bosnia. So book an award ticket because you can refund that either for a low cost or hopefully for no cost in the event that this is all still going on. So redeem miles if you can. Easy.
How do you feel about booking travel for like August, September, October, November, December now? What do you think?
I've booked travel for December now and for, November and December, I guess. I mean, I'm hoping because I needed to reschedule certain travel because they let us cancel our trips to Namibia and Peru as long as we rebook by the end of the year. Of course, I would assume if we are still sitting here doing happy hours in 6 months and not having left our house, which, God, that better not be the case, then they will probably let us extend again. But in general, I mean, I hope things are better by then-ish. What about you? Planning nothing or?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't had time to think about it. It's part of the challenge. And the other challenge, I feel like summer is actually going to be the best time to travel, at least doing some domestic travel. Like that seems like that should be a thing, and maybe also something where we have a bit of a responsibility, to just be spending some money if we can, type of thing. But I really love Spokane in summer. And so that's hard. Like I typically try not to go anywhere in the summer. We have 100 lakes within 100 miles and I love lakes. So, but then I feel like, maybe we get into cold and flu season again and things get complicated. So I should probably book something.
How do we actually know though, when it's safe or when it's responsible to travel? Like I say, that's what I struggle with is what is the point at which, forget government restrictions, but when are you not being a douche canoe by traveling?
It's when we can test and trace and isolate effectively.
But even if, so so there needs to be more advanced testing, and then that is the point at which.
Well, and more effective. Like I'm supposed to be going to Cuba tomorrow. Even if we weren't not flying, I would not go because I could be contagious and I have no way of knowing. Right. You can be asymptomatic for 4 weeks or something. They saw today now, which is crazy. So we have to be able to test and have some indicator of yes, you are contagious or no, you're not contagious before you get on a plane.
Is there a thought that there is testing that is possible if you are asymptomatic?
Yes, that's the thought. There's one company that has developed a test that's based off of looking. There's a lot of asymptomatic people. The data from Iceland is actually super interesting because Iceland is trying to test the entire country. So they test for the antibodies and antigens, and they are actually, one company is looking at testing in the RNA specifically. So yes, that's the whole point. If you can test people who are asymptomatic and determine if they're still contagious. Taking your temperature doesn't work because you might not have a fever, but you might still be contagious.
Right.
So I think that's what you need. You need that ability so you can be hey, Ben, actually you're contagious, even though you don't have any symptoms. Who's everyone that you've come in contact with for the last 2 weeks?
But then if that is what we are waiting for, then aren't we kind of screwed simply because it would need to get to the point where also not only is it possible to get that test, but where it is responsible to get that test as a need for your travel versus just somebody who needs it in general to live. Among the 6-7 billion people on Earth, why should those choosing to travel be among the first?
Well, because we shouldn't have a shortage of tests. That's a fail. That's going to get better. That'll get better. And I think a lot of countries will want to do it. Den B is chiming in and being oh, they're doing this on arrivals in Seoul, and you can't leave the airport until after the result is known. We did the post for my friend Brian, who's flying back to China, the same thing. You got your test before you left the airport or the quarantined area. Countries are going to want to do that if they're going to want to regain commerce and tourism and business travel. So.
And I think that is one of the challenges with realistically, airlines can't even right now get immigration lines in some cases under 90 minutes. So if there is going to be a testing process or something, are we talking about literally a 10-hour wait when you arrive to
It'll be like Beirut everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that's will it actually ever be fun or anytime soon be like all the logistical challenges of this, no matter what it looks like, really concern me in terms of getting out again soon.
Yeah, but I'm for sure it was the same thing like after 9/11 of like, oh, what are we going to need to do to get people to feel like it's safe and responsible to travel again? Like we're going to need to have screenings and we're going to need to check, for liquids and ceramics, and you can't have a knife more than an inch and a half, and no knitting needles. Like knitting needles are allowed again, and so sometimes like bigger containers of toothpaste. But for a while, it was like really tense and it took a really long time. Like you actually needed 3 hours to get through security for a domestic flight for a few months.
It seems to me, though, like this is 9/11 on steroids in terms of 9/11 is like fear-based versus here people have it and it is contagious. Like terrorism is not, for the most part, contagious, hopefully. Like I think it's going to be a real struggle. We'll see.
Yeah. But the way that you combat fear is with science. So if we end up having something science-based that helps, then maybe people say, oh, don't look at the YouTube. Yeah, we're going to have to do comment cleanup. I don't know what's wrong with people. Most of you are being lovely. Some of you are being trolls, and I will ban you. It's not the blog, so it's YouTube. I'm like, oh, boop. Yeah, that's what I have. What are you going to make for brunch on Sunday other than reservations for takeout?
I don't think there's reservations for takeout yet. Once they do, well, Ford has been cooking lately. He started with his specialty, which is eggs. So I hope that we'll get some more.
Make a quiche. Do you guys have a pie tin? A pie
No,
dish?
of course we don't have a pie tin. We just got a pan. Like that is way above.
No, like you could actually make a quiche. It's super easy. Like it's mostly stirring, and I know you can stir because I've seen you do the United cooking.
I think we're good for now. We'll see. The eggs are good, so that's more than we've had in the past. So I think we're on the right path. We'll see how it ends though. But
do you have eggs?
Maybe yeah. Quiche? No quiche, just eggs, scrambled eggs with some avocado. If there's the problem is avocados have like a 1-day peak ripeness, and then the day before they're too hard, the day after they're brown. So it's just
right. It's actually there needs to be like a par system, like buying an avocado a day. For the avocados for 4 days from now, it doesn't work well. Or like when I buy bananas, I'll buy like some green ones and then some yellow ones.
Yes, that is smart. So at the supermarket, all avocados seem like weapons. Like there's never like, oh yeah, this is perfect. It's like, okay, you buy avocados, you're not gonna be able to eat them for a few days.
Unless you're in California.
Yeah. It's 7:30. Lord, almost.
Yeah, I know people are asking if our husbands are ever going to be on happy hour. Can they just do a happy hour without us? Like, can we just do that one day and be like, whatever, I'm going to the beach? I guess we're not going to the beach.
Not going to the beach. That's not a concern, I think. That's yeah. We'll see.
No, maybe, probably not. My husband's sort of camera shy.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and please join us on Sunday for Bring Your Food, or maybe for some people, I know there's like some people in Australia who are having their coffee while they watch this. So
it'll be a mix-up. Like the Australia people can actually bring cocktails on Sunday.
Exactly. They can have their drinks. So actually that is a very unfortunate hour. But I don't know. People are up at weird times with everything going on. So
yeah, so hopefully, we will see you guys on the blog, obviously, and then on Sunday. If you are already here, you're watching this later, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the bell, then you will get a notification on all your devices.
It's a lot of devices potentially, so that's
it is potentially, yeah. So awesome, cool. Thank you guys.
Yes. Good night.